Hey everybody, it's James Lindsay. You're listening to New Discourses Bullets, where I give a short bullet point-like summary of a single topic from woke that we need to understand so we can defeat it. Thank you for your support of New Discourses. Be sure to like and subscribe and tell your friends. I want to talk to you about a very important topic today, and that very important topic is that when we fight back against woke, everything we do has to be by the book. Everything has to be above board. We don't have the luxury of being able to bend the rules in our own favor, or to break the rules, or to invent new rules so that we can get things done. And there are a couple of reasons. The main reason is that the left is, in fact, masters of propaganda. We are not as good. People who tell the truth, let me be clear, it's not about left and right here. People whose orientation is toward the truth are not good at propaganda. And they also tend not to be good at understanding the power of propaganda or the degrees to which propaganda will be used against them. So what will happen reliably following things that we've discussed many times in the past, like from Beautiful Trouble or Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, the principle your target's reaction is your real action. Their goal is to get you to react badly and to do your enemy's work, do the media's work for them. So they're good at writing a script and a story and a narrative that's going to be fed to the media to interpret everything that happens in a way that's favorable to them and escalate strategically. They know what they're doing. They're activists. They're trying to provoke reactions. We've gone over those principles from Beautiful Trouble and Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, which, by the way, is dedicated to Lucifer. If you didn't know that, it's worth knowing. So we've been over that stuff before. What you have to understand is that if we decide that the rules, the Constitution, the law, the rule of law, whatever, don't apply, then that will be used against us. Not it can be used against us, it will be used against us. Look, for example, at how woke activists, and this is true left and right, but the left is more relevant because they have more power, more institutional strength, and so on. Look at anywhere that they've taken a position of power and you try to remove them on completely justifiable grounds. What happens? They entrench, they throw a fit, and the story comes out about how fascists are doing this and all the enemies of democracy are doing that. They run with the story like crazy to try to smear the people who are taking them out of power. I'm happening to read a book right now about the attempted Hungarian Revolution in 1956, where they tried to throw off Soviet rule as a satellite of the USSR. And they have this revolt. The Russians come in and utterly crush them. And the Russians, the communists, the Soviets, I should say, were able to put out a propaganda push that convinced a large part of the world that it was a fascist revolt, not an actual genuine Hungarian revolt. A fascist revolt that was fomented by the United States. And luckily, some of the message was able to get out from Hungary itself that dispelled those rumors, so they didn't take. But had that not happened, it's entirely plausible that the world would have been convinced that the Soviets actually had suppressed something awful, like a resurgence of Nazism or something like that, or fascism in Central Europe, or East Europe. It's an amazing fact of these manipulators, dialectical manipulators, that they can spin a narrative like you wouldn't believe. And so if you bend the rules, break the rules, or invent new rules in order to get something done against their entrenchment, you must expect that they will turn that against you so quickly and so effectively that you will lose a lot of your public support, even if the public broadly agrees. For example, as it does with removing illegal immigrants or aliens from the United States or other countries. Even with broad public support, if you decide to do this in ways that violate the law or people's understanding, you've seen the arguments they've levied about due process and how ugly and complicated they got. This is how they operate. So if you decide to bend or break the rules, here's what's going to happen. They're going to make this narrative, and you say, so what? All they do is make narratives. We need to just get something done. But you don't understand. This is not a competition between two teams. It's not the us versus them. Most people, believe it or not, to this day, are not involved in the culture war. at all. Most people are living their lives. They're aware of it. They don't like it to the degree that they know about it, which I think everybody knows about it. They don't care. They don't want it to be happening, and they're not invested, and they are not going to hear your side of the story first. And these people can be won over to support or reject either side. These people are going to show up and vote when it comes to an election. These people still matter. The watching audience still matters, and that's why I'm making this point. The left is exceedingly good. Dialectical operators are exceedingly good at manipulating the watching audience to win over public support. Remember, they don't have the truth on their side, so how do they accomplish what they're doing? It's not just raw power. Until they have raw power, they can't use raw power, but they still win people over. And the way they do that is through this sense of consensus against something bad: racism, sexism, homophobia, fascism, Nazism, whatever it is. And they're able to frame these things very effectively to win people over to their side. And if you decide that we can throw the rules out, that we can accept a Carl Schmittian unbound executive, that we can let our executive branch run roughshod over the Constitution in order to, quote, get it done, or that we can somehow change the rules mid-game, believe me, what you're going to do is you're going to see a reaction in the everyday normal population that strongly disfavors you and your side. It will cost you more than you gain to do this. So we have to do everything above board. It's not to say it can't be done, and not to say that we shouldn't be doing it. We should be applying the law vigorously. We should have targeted goals. We should be trying to attempt them. We should be articulating them to the public with our own purposes, especially before the fact. But if we don't play above board, then we're going to lose public support. And the consensus in a political environment matters a lot. They will use this against us. So everything has to be above board. Secondly, I don't know why. I don't understand why. It's not fair. I don't like it. I have some guesses about why it's true. But let's say that we just split the world, as so many foolish people do, into these two poles, left and right. I already just said that's not how it works, but a lot of people think that's how it works. They imagine that there's these two sides fighting, left and right. I don't know why the deal is. I have some guesses. But the left can bend and break the rules and people forgive them. I think it's because they're saying that they want really good things, that they're fighting in the name of ending oppression, and they're fighting for liberation, and they just want everything to be more fair and more equal. They have all this great branding. And a lot of people are pretty low information in how they engage with what's going on. And so they hear that. And they say that they're literally against racism. They're against fascism, all these bad things. Now, they don't want to control anything. They just want to help people. Well, on the other side, with the radical right, as it usually gets called, they're much more blunt. They're much more, I don't know that honest is the right word, but in some ways, honest about what they're doing. No, we're going to exercise power. Well, now you're saying we should have the state exercising power against people that are claimed to be its enemies. It freaks people out. Lots of them act in the name of racial motivations. It freaks people out. A lot of the stuff is ugly, and it freaks people out. So the right, if we're going to split it this way, does not get the benefit of the doubt that the left gets. Now, I don't care if you think this is fair. I don't care that you recognize that it's not fair. I don't care if you know that the left is a murderous, desecrating, destructive death cult. It doesn't matter. The reality is that public opinion is more inclined to side with a radical on the left than a radical on the right, with bad behavior on the left because it appears to have good intentions, than with radical behavior on the right, which appears to have either bad intentions or the open use of force, or to drag us, as the left will frame it, back somewhere to the bad old days. And this tilted playing field is a simple reality that I believe is a simple reality that's pervaded most of time, at least all of the modern era. So for the last 200 years, this has just been a bias that we're up against. And the only way that you can navigate that situation is by staying on the books. You have to do everything by the book. You have to say, this is the law, this is how we're going to enforce it, and then go enforce it. You have to be able to appeal to that law when you enforce it. When the narrative comes out, you have to be in a position where you can say, no, actually, the law is this, and this is exactly what we did, and here's how it's consistent with the law. And if it's not a legal thing, it should be a policy thing. This is the policy. We've arranged the policy such that it's fair for everybody, and it applies to everybody, and there you go. Your people don't get to be above the law. You don't get to play a no enemies to the right game. People who violate the principles have to be policed, even just because of this nasty realpolitik of a bias where people think the left is less scary, despite communism, despite its murders, despite its starvation, despite its failures, despite all the wars and things it's caused, and despite all the things it's doing to our society and has done to our society. This bias exists. So that means you have to play the game on hard mode. And on hard mode, that means you play by the book. And third, most important, is that the thing we're trying to save is civilization against this communist barbarism. You cannot save civilization, no matter how beautiful your myth about how society is or should work. You cannot save civilization by breaking all the rules. Civilization is built upon channeling our energies through rules that are universally agreed upon. So you have to stick to the book so that you can continue to make the case again and again, which, by the way, does eventually work. The evidence is in. It is working this time too. That the people who are breaking the rules, in this case, mostly the left, are actually the ones who are the problem. It just takes a long time and a lot of dedicated effort and a lot of patience and a lot of banging your head against the wall to convince them. But if we are the people who are trying to preserve civilization, which is based on the principles and the rules and truth and goodness, we don't get to throw them away in order to get what we claim we're after. First of all, we won't get it. Power corrupts, and the people who claim power under a corrupted system are not going to give it back up. Oh yeah, let's all have this crazy radical right reaction for 3 years and then we'll give liberty back. That's not what's going to happen. The psychopaths that take power in that situation are not going to give it back to you at the end of 3 years. They're just not going to do it. So that's one thing. But secondly, not only have you lost the thing, you've lost yourself along the way. You were fighting for the principles and you were fighting for the rules and the rule of law and all of these things. And those things are now out the window. And then just back to the main point of this short podcast, once you decide to break the rules in the name of restoring the rules, let me clue you in. Nobody's going to believe you. You're like, well, we're going to break the rules for a little while. Yeah, right. Nobody's going to believe you. Everybody understands implicitly that if you have an incentive structure that allows you to break the rules so that you can restore the rules, that when you get power to restore the rules, your incentives to restore the rules are not there because the rules would limit the power that you took. So we have to do everything above the board, partly because the left is better at the propaganda PR game than people who tell the truth, partly because we will lose ourselves and lose what we are defending, and partly because literally nobody's going to believe us if we violate our own core principles. And we shouldn't be believed because there's no reason to believe it. People who are willing to violate their principles, to lie, to cheat, to steal, to hurt people, whatever, to get power, will not behave better after they get the power they're after. They will behave worse because all their incentives point the other way. So we have the harder job because we are defending civilization against barbarism. We are men fighting against beasts and demons and whatever else, whether that's real or metaphorical, doesn't matter. We're the ones who have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. I hear this all the time. James, why do we have to play by the rules when we need to win? And the answer that comes to mind every time for me is because we're not animals, we're not beasts, we're not demons, we're men, for God's sake. We have to hold ourselves to the standards of civilization. And yeah, I get that means that we fight with one arm tied behind our back a lot of the time, but we have to do that, and we have to do it well. And that means, what are the practical solutions? Well, the practical solutions are that we take the law that we have, we make the case for the law that we have, and we apply the law firmly but also fairly. We don't make excuses for people on our side, not just under the law. When it gets to the culture argument and the debates that we're having. We don't make excuses for radicals. We can't afford it. It will cost us everything in a practical sense, and it's not who we are or even what we're defending in a more principled sense. So we have to do everything by the book, above the board, with our eyes on truth and goodness and principle and justice, and we cannot compromise on any of it. So thank you for listening. I hope this short episode of New Discourses Bullets has given you something to think about for how we need to engage in this next phase, or these next phases of the fight against woke, which, as I've warned, is now a two-front fight, because this reactionary side that's rising up wants to break all the rules in the name of taking power in order to right the ship, and we need to understand that it won't.